spend a lot of time looking at ancient texts for wisdom, right?
Yeah.
On life and all that. But today we're taking a bit of a different path. We're going deep into a manual for, well, I guess you could call it the psychedelic experience.
Right.
Hmm.
And I think one of the most interesting things about this particular guide is where it comes from. I mean, we're talking about the Psychedelic Experience by Timothy Leary,
Right.
Ralph Metzner, and Richard Alpert.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is this isn't just some, random guide.
Yeah.
They actually base it on, get this, the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
That's a pretty unusual combination.
It is.
So how does that work? I mean, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that's about what happens after you die, right?
Right. So what they're doing is they're applying that to the death and rebirth of the ego that can happen when you're having a psychedelic experience. And I just want to be super clear here. We are not talking about literal death. This is more about, shedding your old self in a way.
Yeah, like a real fundamental change in your consciousness.
Right. And the book breaks this whole process down into 3 different states. They call them bardos.
Oh, okay. So it's like different stages you might go through.
Yeah, exactly. And the first one is called the Chicky Bardo.
Chicky Bardo. All right. So what happens in this Chicky Bardo?
Well, think of it like this. Complete ego loss. You're just purely aware. So like no more mental chatter,
Uh-huh.
no more worries or anything. You're just completely present.
I can see why having a guide would be useful. Even someone like Aldous Huxley was saying that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is pretty uncharted territory for most people.
Right.
And the book actually uses this really cool image to describe how fragile this state is. They talk about a needle balancing on a thread.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because our egos, they always want to control things, categorize everything, and stick to what they know. We're kind of creatures of habit.
The ego's a pretty powerful force.
It is. So to really get to that pure awareness, you kind of have to just let go of control and surrender to the experience, without judging it or resisting it.
Which I imagine is much easier said than done.
Oh, totally. It's like letting go of the filters you use to see the world.
Yeah.
It takes practice and trust. Trust in yourself, trust in life itself, trust in anyone who might be guiding you. That's something the book talks about a lot.
Makes sense. Trust is what you need when everything else feels uncertain.
Exactly. It's like your anchor in this whole process, so you don't get completely lost in all the new sensations and information that come up.
Right.
So, okay, you're in this Chicky Bardo. You've let go of your ego. What does that actually feel like?
Well, the book mentioned a few common things people experience. Like you might feel these waves of energy moving through your body.
Okay, that sounds pretty physical.
Yeah. And you become super aware of all your bodily functions, like your heartbeat and breathing.
I can see how that might be a bit much for some people.
It can be. And then there's this idea of Kundalini energy, which is pretty wild.
Kundalini energy. Yeah, I've heard of that. So what is that exactly?
Well, it's this primal energy that supposedly sits at the base of your spine. And when it gets activated, it can rise up. And that's supposed to bring about some really big shifts in consciousness.
Huh.
You might feel intense sensations along your spine, but also this clearing of mental clutter.
So it's like a physical and mental purification kind of thing?
Yeah, something like that. And this clearing can make it easier to have insights and realizations. But the book also says that even this blissful state can be unpleasant if you're not mentally prepared.
Oh, so there's a downside too.
Yeah. Without the right context, those intense sensations can be scary. That's why a guide is so important. They can help you make sense of it all.
Makes sense someone to kind of translate the experience.
Exactly. Okay, so you've made it through the Chicky Bardo. You've let go. What's next?
Well, then you move on to the second Bardo, the Choni Bardo.
Choni Bardo. This sounds a bit more intense.
It is. This is where things get really vivid.
Yeah.
It's the stage of hallucinations and visions.
Ah, okay. The trippy stuff.
Yeah, the swirling colors and images you always hear about. But the book says these aren't just random. They're actually like glimpses into your subconscious.
Interesting. So there's some meaning behind them.
Right. And they break these visions down into 7 types, each with its own kind of message.
7. Wow. Okay. So what's the first one?
The first one is called the source light. It's like encountering this super bright white light. People often interpret it as like the source of all being, the creator.
That sounds pretty intense.
It can be. The book says it can evoke a lot of awe, but also terror if you're not ready for it.
So even the seemingly positive visions can be overwhelming.
Exactly. Okay, so the next one is called internal flow. This is where you might see or hear these luminous forms and sounds. It's like getting a direct look into how your mind works.
Well, that's fascinating, like those aha moments, but amplified.
Exactly. And then there's fur flow, which is all about feeling this intense sense of unity and love, like you're merging with everything.
That sounds beautiful.
It can be, but the book also says your ego can resist this merging. It can feel like you're losing yourself, and that can actually lead to feelings of isolation.
Huh. So even in this blissful state, there can be conflict.
Right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's about understanding yourself, the good and the bad. And here's the thing about all these visions. They come from inside you.
They do.
Yeah, they're not external entities or anything. The book calls it your karmic residue, like the leftover effects of your past experiences.
Karmic residue. Okay, so it's like when you have a dream about an ex.
Yeah, exactly.
It means there's still some stuff to process.
Right. And then there are the wrathful figures we talked about, the demons and monsters.
Oh, yeah. Those sound pretty scary.
They can be. But the book says even these terrifying visions have a purpose. They might be a sign that you're about to have a breakthrough.
Really? So seeing a demon can actually be a good thing.
Well, it could mean you're facing your deepest fears and resistances, you know?
Oh,
It's like your mind's last attempt to cling to control before it lets go of the ego.
So if you can recognize them as part of you, you can work through them.
Exactly. Okay, so once you've navigated all that inner turmoil, you enter the third bardo,
The Sidpa Bardo.
the Sidpa bardo, and what happens there?
This is the re-entry phase, coming back to everyday reality. And you might feel kind of disoriented, maybe even have these fleeting sensations of enhanced abilities or insights.
Right, because you're shifting back to your normal way of being.
Exactly. And the book says that if you try to fight this re-entry process, it just makes it worse.
So acceptance is key here, too.
Yeah. And there are a couple of specific experiences you might have in the Sidpa Bardo. One is the judgment vision.
Judgment vision. So, like, standing before God and being judged for your sins.
No, not quite. It's more like your own conscience evaluating your actions. It can be pretty intense self-reflection.
So, like, a super honest look in the mirror.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And then there are the sexual visions.
Those can be a bit sensitive.
They can be. The book talks about them in relation to our primal instincts, you know?
And how it's about acknowledging those instincts without getting totally consumed by them.
So not getting stuck in those desires, but moving towards something higher.
Right. Now, what if someone wants to stay in that altered state for longer?
Like prolong the feeling of expanded awareness.
Yeah. Is there a way to kind of gently resist coming back?
The book actually suggests 4 ways to potentially extend that ego loss.
Really? What are they?
One is to meditate on a spiritual figure or guide, like the Buddha.
Okay.
Just focus on their image and teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Another is to concentrate on good actions, both past and future.
So focusing on positive energy.
Exactly. Then there's contemplating the illusion of reality. You know, how everything is always changing.
Right. Nothing is permanent.
Right. And finally, you can try to immerse yourself back into that void, that pure consciousness from the first Bardo.
So diving back into the ocean of awareness, but wouldn't that be kind of clinging to the experience?
That's a good point. But the book presents these techniques as tools, not as ways to cling out of fear.
Oh, I see. It's about making conscious choices even within that altered state.
Exactly. So it's like you're learning to navigate this whole experience more skillfully.
Right, like becoming a master of that needle on the thread.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered the 3 Bardos, the visions, re-entry, and even how to extend ego loss. This has been quite a journey.
It has. And we've really only just scratched the surface of what this manual offers.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, there's so much practical advice in here. And next time, we're going to dive into that. You know,
Well-
like how do you actually prepare for a psychedelic experience? What steps can you take to make it safe and meaningful?
That sounds like a good place to pick up. There's a lot to unpack there.
There is. So we've talked about all these different states of consciousness, but how do you actually get ready for such a big experience?
Well, the book really stresses the importance of planning and preparation. You know, this isn't something to just jump into.
Right, not a spur of the moment kind of thing.
No, definitely not. It's a serious undertaking. And the first thing they talk about is clarifying your intentions.
Okay, like what are you hoping to get out of this?
Exactly. What are your goals? They actually list out 4 main possibilities. One is increasing your personal power,
Okay, how so?
like developing better self-control, becoming more effective in achieving your goals.
So using psychedelics for self-improvement?
Yeah, basically. Then there's cultivating a sense of duty or service to others.
Okay, so more of an outward focus.
Right. It's about deepening your empathy, finding ways to help people.
That's beautiful.
It is. Then there's just having fun, enjoying the aesthetic experience, the novelty of it all.
Yeah, that's important too.
It is. And lastly, there's transcendence, which is more of a spiritual goal. Seeking liberation from the ego, connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Wow, that's quite a range.
It is. And the book acknowledges all of them as valid reasons for exploring psychedelics. But once you know what you're after, the next step is setting the right scene.
The setting. Yeah, that's huge.
It is. The environment can really make or break the experience, and this includes the physical space, the people you're with, even the time of day.
So what do they recommend for the physical space?
They say to make it safe, comfortable, and visually appealing, like a sanctuary where you can relax and let go.
So no harsh lighting or loud noises.
Right. Think more like soft lighting, calming music, maybe some plants and natural elements.
Makes sense. And what about the people you're with?
Choose wisely. You want people you trust deeply, who understand your intentions and can support you if things get tough. It's like your psychedelic support team.
That's a good way to put it. And they also talk about having a guide, right?
Yes. Ideally, someone with experience in these states who can offer guidance and reassurance.
Especially if things get intense.
Exactly. But it's not just about the external environment and people around you. It's also about your internal state.
Right, preparing yourself mentally and emotionally.
Exactly. Understanding your fears, your desires, any potential triggers. The more you know yourself going in, the better you can handle what comes up.
So it's like preparing your inner landscape.
Yes, exactly. They suggest things like meditation to quiet the mind, journaling to explore your feelings, even therapy to gain self-awareness.
Okay, so it's about building that inner strength and resilience.
Right. And now we come to the substances themselves.
Yes, the psychedelics.
The manual mainly focuses on LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin. The classics, you could say.
And each one has its own unique effects, I imagine.
They do. It's about choosing the one that aligns with your intentions and your experience level.
Like picking the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And they strongly advise against mixing substances, especially for beginners. Start with a low dose to see how you react, and only increase gradually if you feel comfortable.
So respect the power of these substances.
Absolutely. And of course, make sure you get them from a safe and reliable source. Safety first.
Always. But even with the best preparation, things can still get challenging, right?
They can. Fear and anxiety are pretty common reactions.
So what do you do when that happens?
Well, the book reminds you that these experiences are temporary. They will pass.
Like a wave, it will eventually break.
Exactly. They also suggest focusing on your breath, feeling your body, maybe even changing your physical environment. If you're feeling claustrophobic inside, go outside for some fresh air.
Makes sense. And how can a guide help in those moments?
A guide can be so valuable. They can offer reassurance, grounding techniques, just a calming presence. They can remind you that you're not alone and that this will pass.
It's like having a seasoned captain on a stormy sea.
Exactly. And remember, the journey doesn't end when the psychedelic effects wear off.
Right, there's still the integration part.
Yeah. Taking those insights and applying them to your life, your relationships, your work, making real lasting changes.
So how do you do that? How do you integrate the experience?
The book suggests journaling about what you went through, meditating to process it, and expressing yourself creatively. It's about making meaning out of the experience.
So it's an active process, not just passive.
Right. And another thing they talk about is group dynamics.
Oh, yeah, when you bring other people into the mix.
It adds a whole other layer of complexity. And the book really stresses choosing your group carefully, especially if you're new to this.
Why is that so important?
Well, the wrong group dynamics can really derail the experience. You want people you trust completely who share similar intentions and values.
So like your psychedelic soul tribe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And they say to avoid tripping with people who bring negative energy or try to control others.
It's about creating a safe and respectful space for everyone.
Exactly. Shared intentions, open communication, a sense of unity, those are all important. And if you can do that, the book says the experience can be even more powerful, almost like a collective consciousness emerges.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. But there are potential pitfalls, too. They talk about ego games.
Ego games, what are those?
It's when people try to dominate the experience, impose their interpretations on others.
Oh, I see. So like someone trying to be the trip leader.
Yeah, basically. And
Yeah.
that can create a lot of tension and conflict.
Right.
No. So it's helpful to have a guide who can mediate and keep things balanced.
So what makes a good guide in a group setting?
Well, they say experience is key, of course, but also wisdom, compassion, a strong presence, someone who's been there and can hold space for others.
Like a wise elder?
Yeah, something like that. And they need to have a deep understanding of the psychedelic experience, both personally and theoretically.
Right. It's not just about book smarts.
No, it takes a certain kind of character and emotional maturity to guide others through these intense states.
So it's about finding that trusted companion, someone who can help you navigate those uncharted waters.
Exactly. And the integration process continues even after the group experience ends.
So it doesn't just stop there.
No. They suggest things like sharing circles to process the experience,
Yeah.
creative expression to explore it, even community service to ground the insights in action.
Wow. So it's about carrying the experience forward into your life and the world.
Right. But Leary, Metzner, and Alpert didn't just stop at individual and group transformation.
They didn't.
No. They saw psychedelics as potential catalysts for social and cultural change on a much larger scale.
Like a collective awakening.
Exactly. They believed that these experiences could help us transcend our egos and see our interconnectedness.
Wow. That's huge.
It is. And they thought this could transform how we relate to each other, the environment, everything.
So creating a more just and compassionate world?
That was their vision.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, they faced a lot of resistance.
Oh, yeah. They were pretty controversial figures.
They were. Their research was suppressed. They were demonized in the media.
That's really unfortunate.
It is. It created a lot of fear and misinformation that still lingers today.
Right. That stigma is still there.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to keep having these conversations, to challenge those outdated beliefs and educate ourselves.
It's about reframing the narrative, getting past the fear.
Exactly. And honoring the legacy of pioneers like Leary, Metzner, and Alpert. They took a lot of risks to explore this potential.
Right. They paved the way.
They did. And we need to continue their work, advocating for responsible research and access to these powerful tools.
Because they can be used for good, but also for harm.
Exactly. So their vision was about more than just changing minds. It was about evolving our whole society.
That's inspiring.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to remember that psychedelics aren't a cure-all.
No, they're not magic.
But they can be a powerful catalyst for awakening, both individually and collectively. They can help us see the world in new ways, question our assumptions, and potentially create a better future.
Yeah, I like that. It's about opening our minds and hearts to new possibilities.
Exactly. And now let's dive into the spiritual side of things. Because Leary, Metzner, and Alpert, they weren't just scientists.
Yeah, they were very much into spirituality.
Yeah, and they saw psychedelics as tools for spiritual awakening, for transcending the ego and tapping into deeper meaning and purpose.
Okay, so how does that connect to the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
Well, remember how we talked about ego death? That's a key concept in Buddhism, too. It's about letting go of the illusion of a separate self and realizing your true nature.
So the psychedelic experience can be like a mini ego death.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And the book also talks about karma, you know.
Interesting. So how does that play into it?
Well, they believe that your past actions and intentions can influence your psychedelic experience.
Huh. So it's not just random.
No. It's like your karma is shaping what you encounter, the challenges and insights you have.
That's pretty profound.
It is. And it's important to approach these experiences with humility and respect.
Right, like you're entering sacred ground.
Exactly. And they stress the importance of integrating any spiritual insights you gain through practices like meditation, prayer, journaling, connecting with nature.
So it's not just about having a peak experience, it's about bringing that wisdom back into your everyday life.
Exactly. And they believe that these insights could lead to a more just and peaceful world.
So it's a ripple effect.
Yeah. But they also acknowledge that these experiences can be challenging, even bring up difficult emotions. So it takes courage and support to work through those.
Makes sense. You don't want to get lost in the transcendent moments or become attached to them.
Right. It's about finding that balance between exploring those heights of consciousness and grounding yourself in reality.
So it's an ongoing process, a dance between the spiritual and the mundane.
I like that. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful way to put it. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about creativity.
Okay.
Because psychedelics have this amazing ability to unlock creative potential, to help you break free from conventional thinking and imagine new possibilities.
I can see that. It's like they shake things up in your brain.
They do. And that can lead to a surge of inspiration, you know?
Yeah, like you're seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And the book connects this to the creative process itself, you know, the inspiration, the incubation, the manifestation.
So like artists need to let go of their preconceived notions to create something new.
Exactly. And psychedelics can help with that letting go.
Makes sense. It's like tapping into a deeper well of inspiration.
It is. And the book also links it to the concept of flow state, that state of total absorption and effortless creativity.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. So psychedelics can help you get into that flow state.
They can, which can lead to some amazing breakthroughs. And the book's message is that everyone has this creative potential. It's just waiting to be unlocked.
That's a beautiful idea. And what about empathy and compassion?
Well, psychedelics can break down the barriers between you and others. You start to see the world through their eyes, feel their emotions.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And that can lead to more compassionate behavior, putting that love into action.
So making the world a kinder place.
Exactly. And the book also talks about developing a more holistic worldview.
What does that mean?
It's about moving beyond dualistic thinking, seeing the world as interconnected, a web of life.
So not just us versus them, but recognizing our shared humanity.
Right. And understanding that our actions have consequences, especially when it comes to the environment.
So taking responsibility for our impact on the planet.
Exactly. That's crucial for creating a sustainable future.
Absolutely. Now, we can't talk about psychedelics without talking about their therapeutic potential.
Right. This is a huge area of research now.
Yeah, I've heard about studies using psychedelics to treat depression, anxiety, even addiction.
And it's interesting because Leary, Metzner, and Alpert, they were already talking about this back then.
They were ahead of their time.
They were. They saw the potential for healing and growth, for confronting difficult emotions in a safe setting.
So like shining a light on our shadow selves.
Exactly. And psychedelics can help you reframe your narratives, let go of limiting beliefs.
Right, like rewriting your story.
Yeah. And connecting with deeper meaning and purpose, which is so important for well-being.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But they emphasize that it's not a substitute for traditional therapy.
No, definitely not. It's more like a complementary approach. Yeah. And it's crucial to do it with a qualified therapist.
Right, someone who can guide you through the process.
Exactly. And it's important to have realistic expectations, too. Healing takes time and effort.
So it's a journey, not a quick fix.
Exactly. And finally, let's come back to this idea of death and rebirth.
Okay.
The book draws on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but it's not about literal death. It's about the symbolic death and rebirth of the ego.
Right, like shedding your old self and emerging as something new.
Exactly. And this can be both challenging and liberating. The book compares it to the process of dying, letting go of attachments, surrendering to the unknown.
Wow, that's deep.
It is. And they even touch on the concept of reincarnation, of accessing past life memories.
Really?
Yeah, they see it as a way to expand our understanding of consciousness and reality.
So it's like a whole new way of looking at life and death.
It is, and they break down the psychedelic experience into these 3 bardos, just like the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Okay, remind me how that goes again.
So the first bardo, the Chiki bardo,
Yeah.
is like the dissolution of the self, that sense of unity.
Right.
Then the Choni bardo is the transition phase, where the old self gets dismantled. There are a lot of challenges and tests in that stage.
Yeah, we talked about those.
Right, and finally, the Sitpa bardo is the integration phase, where a new, transformed ego emerges.
So it's like a complete cycle of death and rebirth.
Exactly. And the book's message is that this whole process can lead to greater freedom, purpose, and connection.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So it's like the psychedelic experience is a catalyst for transformation, both on a personal and a spiritual level.
Exactly. And the journey doesn't end there. It's an ongoing process of growth and evolution.
Wow, this has been an incredible deep dive. I mean, we've covered so much ground.
We have. And yet there's still so much more to explore.
I know, right? This manual is like a roadmap for a more conscious life, a call to awaken our potential.
It is. But it's not a journey to be taken lightly.
No, definitely not. It requires preparation, intention, a willingness to face your depths.
And to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. There are risks involved. And we need to approach this with respect, humility, and a deep understanding.
Absolutely. And remember, this book is not a blanket endorsement of psychedelic use.
Right. It's about responsible exploration with intention and a commitment to growth.
Exactly. So for all you fellow deep divers out there, happy journeying.
And may your explorations be filled with insight and transformation.
And always remember, safety first.
Always. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of the psychedelic experience.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep expanding your awareness.
And keep diving deep.
Deep dive complete.
We made it.
See you next time.